And welcome back to the shop. I got here a 2022 CRF250R. It's Caitlin's bike. Going to be doing a top end on it. This walkthrough will be pretty much the same steps for the CRF250R from 2018 to 2024 with minor differences here or there. Mainly the battery. They moved the battery at some point down to here and just minor stuff like that, but otherwise it's all the same stuff. Parts we have for this job is a brand new cylinder head gasket from Honda, the timing chain tensioner gasket, a cylinder base gasket, and we're going to go with the Wiseco piston on this one, mainly just to save some money. She's a little bit on a budget, but she wants to get the top end done. Now we're also going to skip the timing chain on this one, but luckily the CRF250R has a pretty robust timing chain, and I typically suggest changing the timing chain out every other top end on this bike because they kind of hold up pretty well. And for the average track rider, I suggest changing a piston out every 50 hours or less on a 250F. If you're really fast guy, you might want to shorten that down to about 30 or 40. But for your average track rider, 50 hours is good. And then do the timing chain and piston at 100 hours and you're going to be good on this bike. Because again, it does have a pretty robust timing chain and it holds up really well. Now this bike currently has 89 hours on it and it is a virgin. It hasn't been taken apart yet. Of course I did suggest a timing chain, but she said to just skip on it for now, as long as it looks good when I go inside the motor. If it doesn't, we'll order one, but as long as it looks good and it has a lot of room left on the timing chain tensioner to cinch it up as it does age, I'll consider it good enough to keep running it. But even though the Wiseco piston is a little bit cheaper than the OEM piston when you calculate the wrist pin, the rings, and everything like that for the OEM piston, that doesn't mean that it is a inferior piston. This is a very strong forged piston. It's a race piston. It's built well. It's made in America, so you can't complain about that. I really like Wiseco pistons, so it's not really a downgrade. In a lot of aspects, it's actually an upgrade, but it's also a little bit cheaper, at least here in America, because they are made in America. Okay, let's dig in. First thing I'm going to do is get the seat off of there. Alright, get the tank off there. Missing that one over there. That's nice. And before I go any further, let me go ahead and disconnect the battery. As I say in all my videos, I use an impact a lot during teardown, but I'm real cautious of where I use it during reassembly because you can strip stuff out really easily. Alright, I'm going to disconnect the negative. The main reason why is in case someone accidentally bumps the start button while we have this motor all apart. That can get nasty. You don't want that. So if we disconnect the negative, well, you can press that start button as much as you want. Alright, make sure it's definitely out of the way. There we go. I'll put this back in here so we don't lose it. Okay, I'm going to start working on getting that tank up and off of there. Let me get the shrouds out of the way first. Alright, gotta get this tank off here. They have that hour mirror bolted on there. Let me get that off real quick. Okay, got that out. Okay, these Honda tanks, they have a safety strap that kind of keeps you from just yanking the tank up and off of there. First, let me get this little rubber strap off. There we go. Okay, so they have a safety strap. You can see that strap right there. And it gets caught up right here. So I'm just going to work this off. You're probably not going to be able to see how I'm doing on the camera here, but I'll show you once I get it off there. There we go. That's all it is. It just clips onto this piece right here, this little safety strap. You have to disconnect that to be able to lift the tank high enough to get the electrical connection off and the fuel line off. start with the electrical connection here. Get that off, alright. Like I was saying, they put that safety strap there. It just keeps the average Joe from yanking the tank up and off of there and breaking the electrical wires or popping the fuel line off or whatever. Unhook the... Maybe I can get it from this side. Let's see. Yeah. There we go. What I did there was I got this piece disconnected off the tank too. Now we just have the fuel line to worry about. Separate the rubber, slide this little piece of plastic out, and then there's going to be a green tab. It's easier to get that from the other side. Here we go. I'll set the camera on this side so you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Roll the tank over here. Okay, it has this little green tab right here. And if you slide that upward, just like that, now you can take the fuel line and pull it off. Set that aside. Okay, I'm going to find something to plug this with. I do have a set of plugs that are designed specifically for this, but it's on another bike right now. So I'm going to find something else to plug this with, just so no debris go into the fuel line while we're doing this job, which could get in the fuel injector and clog it up. You don't want that. There we go. I found something that'll work perfectly. If you can't find anything to cover, you can always just cover it with a Ziploc bag. I mean, a sandwich bag, and put a Ziploc around it. The main point is just making sure nothing goes in there. Okay, well I guess no better time now to get that exhaust off of there. Let's do that. It's not very good. Up, straight, up. Alright, again, this is not just level down through design of fast. It's just little time. I'm going to keep going to that first machine. One. Voila. Okay, gonna go ahead and drain the coolant now. Going to be that bolt right there on the bottom of the water pump. You'll notice it has a brass copper looking washer underneath it. That's the one you want to loosen up. I'm going to try to collect it here the best I can. It would have been easier if I pulled the skid plate off, I'll tell you that. Oh, there we go. Alright, I put that back in there. We make sure it's tight. Okay, I put that in there, tighten it up. I like to do that ahead of time so I don't have to worry about it at the end of the job. I seem to get carried away. I'll start pouring coolant in the motor and it'll start shooting out of here. I just get it in there ahead of time so I don't have to worry about it later. Okay, I guess I'll go ahead and remove these motor mounts, the one on this side and the one on the other side. Oh, that's a 10. Not bad. I didn't realize that these are 10 millimeters. I thought they were 12. There goes Beavis. We have a spacer there. Drop the spacer. Anytime Beavis hears this impact, he goes nuts. Hey dude, I'm making a video. Between the roosters and Leo here. Okay, what's next? Hey, come on dude, I'm working. Okay, on the left side of the motor here, I guess I'll start working on getting some of this stuff off over here. Let me just pop that wire. I could probably leave that little tab on there. And right here. Pull this line off. I'm going to pull a hose off or should I say the whole boss here instead of just a hose. That'll give us a little more room when it's time to slide this cylinder head up off the motor. Okay, let's see what I can leave this one here. It looks like the cylinder head's just going to come up. Okay, I pretty much know I'm going to have to pull the ignition coil off the frame here because the cylinder head's going to hit it if I don't. So let me get the spark plug out of the hole. See if I can slip this impact. Yes, I can. Now when I go to put this ignition coil back in, I'll be using Loctite on these bolts. From factory they don't, but I have seen them come loose, and you don't want that, obviously. Alright, they have an hour meter connected here. I'm going to try to leave all this connected and just tuck it up out of the way. There we go. Okay, going to go ahead and pull this hose off here too. That goes from the valve cover. There we go, from the valve cover to the air box here. But before I pull the valve cover off, I need to make room because it likes to hit these cables right here and the radiator there. So we have to pull the whole subframe back anyway to get the throttle body up off the head to get the head off. So let's just go ahead and do that now so we can get the valve cover off too while we're at it. So I'm going to start by removing all 4 of the subframe bolts. Okay, I'm going to loosen up this clamp right here for the intake boot that connects to the throttle body. Boy, that sucker's on there tight. Let me see. Get a ratchet on it. Alright, someone had that on there really tight, but she's loose now. You want to get that pretty loose to give you more than enough room to slide it off. I'm also going to take this little reusable zip tie here and just pull that off for the time being. Because what we're going to do is we're going to slide this whole subframe back with the throttle body, and that will pull it off the cylinder head. But the wires right here, by removing that zip tie, it gives them a little bit more room to kind of pull forward, because it was pretty tight with that zip tie on. But now that that's off, we'll have some room to pull it back. So let's go ahead and do that. You want to be gentle when you do this, but let's give it a shot. Here we go. I'm going to use a pry bar. Very gently though, and be careful where you pry at. There. I already had the bolts loose on this valve cover. That's why you see it rocking. You saw how it just popped off there? You want to pry. This is a good place. Anywhere solid. You don't want to pry on one of these knobs or any of the sensors. You want to make sure it's a solid place on the throttle body that's not going to break anything. Just going to peel it back just a little bit. Just give us a little bit of room to work with here. There we go. See, now we have just enough room in there to pull the cylinder head off and to get the valve cover off. But at this point, the subframe is only being held in place by the various wires and stuff like that. So it's real important if you got kids around or something, make sure you don't let them touch that subframe. Don't let them start pressing on it or anything. Just let it sit. It's a light subframe. It's very light, so it's not putting much pressure on the wires. As long as no one fools with it, it'll be fine. Okay, like I mentioned, I already had the bolts loose for the valve cover here. I did that off camera. And then I remembered, I was like, oh wait, that's right, on this bike, you got to get that throttle body backing out of the way before you can pull the valve cover off. So I left them in for now. There we go. Now I should have no problem weaseling this thing on out of there. with the gasket and all. Alright. Okay, I'm going to remove these two covers here. If you've never done this job before, or any time you do a job on a 4-stroke, that's the wrong size. It's good to verify the cam timing first before you take it apart, because that'll give you the confidence to put it back together that you're going to be able to get the cams timed in properly. Of course, that's assuming the motor is still in good shape and you can spin the motor by hand to line up the timing marks. If your motor's locked up, you might not have that luxury. But this motor is not locked up, so we do have that luxury. I already know where the timing marks belong in this motor, so I really don't have to do this. I do this for a living. I do these all the time. But for your sake, for video's sake, for you guys at home that haven't done this before, I'm going to do it the way I would suggest you do it. Okay, I'm going to spin the motor by hand, and I'm looking for a mark in here that lines up. That's the wrong size. It's a 19. Okay, here we go. I'm going to line them up first, and then I'll show you what I'm looking for here. I'll get the camera on it. There we go. Alright, let me show you what we have. Okay, inside of here, on the stator, you'll see two lines. There's one right here. Sometimes a little hard to see. This one, you can see it's right there. It doesn't look like they quite got it all the way across. That happens sometimes. And then you see the one above it that does go all the way across. It's the one above it that we're going to be paying attention to. It's just, I would call it the second line. These motors, they spin, let me do like this. They spin counterclockwise on this side of the motor. This crank spins the same direction the rear wheel spins when the bike is going forward, right? So that's why I call that the second line, or you can call it the line that's on top of the two lines on this side. So it's the top line. You line it up to that little groove right there. You line that second line, the top line, up to that groove, and then we'll go to the other side and check the cam timing. Over here on the other side of the motor, we have, let me stabilize this camera here. Okay, we'll have a line right there. They like to put this white paint on it, but underneath that white paint, you'll see there's a line, and it matches up to the mating surface right here in the cylinder head. There's another line right here. They kind of missed the paint on this one. They were doing a quick job that day. It lines up to that mating surface right here. Oh, I see what they did. They just went straight across like that. Well, guess he was in a hurry that day. All right, we got the other line right here. It's underneath the paint, but it's there, and lines up to the mating surface. And lastly, over here, another line right here, which, as you can see, if I lower the camera there, lines up to the mating surface. So that's properly timed in. Now, if you're doing this at home, it's the first time doing it, you're familiar with it, so you're going to be confident when it's time to put it together that you put it together right. Of course, the exhaust camshaft of these motors are the ones that always have the auto decompression here. That's one way to always be able to tell that that's the exhaust cam. So now you know. Alright, let's continue on. Okie dokie, time to get the timing chain tensioner off. First thing I'm going to do is loosen up this 8mm on the end here. It's a lot easier to loosen that up while it's still on the bike, because when we go to put it back together, we're going to have to take that back off completely to reset the timing chain tensioner. Alright, this is just 8mm here. Sorry for all the noise. Now once you have this loose, because we're reusing this timing chain, I'm going to, now that it is expanded, let me show you what I mean. The timing chain, this plunger right here for the timing chain tensioner is fully expanded now that it's out of the bike. I'm going to push it in here and push it and see how much more room it has to expand. See, I can't get it in anymore. Of course, that's why we have to reset it to get it in when we go to put it back together. But all I'm checking is how much more room it has to tighten up that chain to make sure it's not going to the chain's not going to stretch out to the point that it's too loose and then it jumps timing. This one has a lot of room to go, so we're going to be good there. But the good news for Caitlin is these Hondas, they do have pretty robust timing chains. They're pretty big for a 250F in my opinion. I believe it's the same size and the same one for the 450 Honda, so it's basically like a 450 timing chain. By the way, I'm loosening these up and I'm going to pull these out, but I'm going to leave the bottom one on for now. So when I go to pull the cylinder head off, this bottom one right here will hold the cylinder down so it won't come up with the cylinder head. And then we'll remove that one to get the cylinder off after we get the cylinder head off. Okay, let me go ahead and remove the water temperature sensor here. Let me unplug that. There we go. I'm also going to unbolt this radiator right over here because that'll give me a little more room. Otherwise the head might hit it when I go to lift it up, but it'll give me a little more room if I unbolt it and just kind of shift it that way and get that out of the way. So let me do that. Alright, there we go. I have that nice and loosened up so I can push it out of the way as needed. I'm just going to leave that hose on for now. I think it's going to be okay. Back over here on this side, left side, I'm noticing that there's also a second wire, the negative for the battery that's connected to this little clip thing. I already unclipped this, but since I see that there, it's just going to be easier. Just remove this bracket, unbolt it. So that's what I'm going to do here. There we go. That's all unbolted now, out of the way. So we're going to be good there. Okay, time to remove the cam cap. Give me 2 8mm right here first. Let me get an extension. It'll make that easier. Alright, try this again. By the way, I appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. Okay, we're going to need a 10mm now. I got the 2 8mm off. I pulled that off so quick I didn't show you. I pulled this off that was right there covering the timing chain, so that's just a little guide or whatever protector. But now let's go ahead and get the cam cap off. But yeah, I appreciate you guys watching these videos. I read in the comment section people are watching these all over the world, which is really cool. Shout out to Canada, Germany, Indonesia, all you guys. I appreciate it. Hope you guys are getting something out of this. There we go. If you're in the Florida area and you need some work on your dirt bike, shoot me a message, email or whatever. I'll take care of you. Ooh, got that one. Okay, the two right here, they have a copper washer on them. So make sure you collect that and remember that when you go to put it back together. Them are the only two that had the copper washer. So you're going to have to put them back in that place. Alright, let's go ahead and pull the cam cap up and off. Yeah, there we go. You just got to wiggle it. It can be on tight because of the dowel pins. Here, let me get something. Try to give it a little love cry here. This one's on there pretty tight. Okay, I'm using a flathead. There's a little tab that sticks out on this side. That's kind of helping me. This one, there we go. This one's on there pretty tight. Alright. Cam cap is off. I'm collecting that little rubber seal right here, making sure it's in place. Make sure it didn't stick on here. It is in place. There's a little groove that it sits in there, but just make sure that that's there. Make sure both the dowel pins are here, or if they're there, collect them. Just, you don't want to lose them. Okay. Now I'm just going to grab the timing chains and pull them out of there. You got to kind of get creative and find the right position where you can get the, once you get the chain off one of these, then they just come right out. Let me go over here on this side, try it from here. There we go. And I'll just drop the timing chain right there in the hole. camshafts are out. Okay, out of the 4 head bolts here, the 2 over here on this side, the hole they sit in is filled with oil. So I'm just going to stick a shop towel in each one and collect that oil up before I try to pull them out, because otherwise they'll just, I'm going to be using an end pack to pop these off and it'll just spit oil all over the bike in the shop. There we go, got that one. Let me get this one. Alright. Okay, the head bolts are 12 millimeters. I'm going to attempt to use my smaller end pack here, see if it will pop them off. Let's see. No, not this one. Okay. Got my big gun here. Let's see how this one does. Of course, you can do this by hand with a breaker bar, but yeah, I got an impact. Might as well. And that one works. There we go. That one hardly ever fails me. Okay, each one of these head bolts have a washer. Guess I didn't twist this one all the way out. Let's see. There we go. Each one has a washer. Make sure you collect that washer. It's obvious on the 2 on the left, but the 2 on the right, that washer will stay down in the hole there. As you pull the nut out, you notice I'm using a magnet here to grab that. I'll use that same magnet, grab the washer. If you don't have a magnet to do this job, you're going to want to go get one of these magnets. They sell them at any hardware, auto parts store, heck, hardware stores too. Get them online, wherever, they're cheap. There we go. Anytime you work on a dirt bike, you really need to have a magnet like this around. Okay, I think I could probably pull the cylinder head off now. Let's give it a shot. This is a tough one. It's tight. Over here. It's off of there. I'm sure we're going to have just as much fun, if not more, when it's time to put it in. That's a tight one. But there's the top of the piston. Okay. Let's clean this up a little bit. Alright, back on the right side. Let me go take this off. And now we can slide that cylinder right up off of there. As I lift it up, I'm going to slide my fingers underneath it in case any of them dowel pins stuck on the bottom of the cylinder. Okay, I feel one there. It doesn't fall into the motor. Okay, there's one on the bottom of the cylinder right here on the front side. I'm going to keep my finger in that so it doesn't fall into the motor. There we go. The other one's stuck right there. Because sometimes on some bikes, when they fall into the motor, they can find their way all the way back down at the transmission side, and yeah, they can get a little tough to fish them out. All right, let me grab that one. But you see this one right here? I just put my finger on it and held it since I felt that it was sticking to the bottom of the cylinder. I just don't need it falling and going in the motor, that's all. Again, if it did, I'd break out my magnet and try to fish it out. Okay, I want to pop the circlip off and get the piston up and out of there, but I'm going to put this rag around it first in case that circlip goes flinging and dinging. It doesn't go down into the motor. And honestly, when they fling off, sometimes you don't even know where they went, right? You don't even know if it went in the motor. You will sit there for hours with the magnet, wondering if it went in the motor or not, just to find that it actually shot to the other side of your shop. There we go. And in this shop, I have them all over the place. So all over the place. So I don't even know if that's the one that came out of the motor or not. So it's just best to put a rag in there and be safe. Of course, try your best not to let it fling out, and obviously. All I did there was just use this punch and gave it some really light love taps to push that wrist pin on through. Alright. Go ahead and remove the cylinder base gasket here. Okay, before we go to the bench and take a look at the piston, let's check out this rod. First thing I'm going to do is check for left and right play. There's very little. You'll get more and more left and right play until you get up and down play. So it first starts with more and more left and right as it wears, and at some point you'll start finding up and down. This one's so tight left and right, I'm almost for certain I'm not going to find any up and down. But let me check. So what I do is I'm going to move it left and right, left and right. Let me do it like this so you can see. Find the center point of the left and right, and that's where I'm going to check for the up and down. Let's try it again. There's none. Okay, I'm going to do it with 2 fingers here because I can feel a little bit, or 2 hands. There is none. Next thing I'm going to do is push it left and right while I have my 2 fingers on both sides of the crank touching the case and the crank down up in here like this. And I'm going to take and do the same thing. Now what I'm checking for is up and down at the crank area. There can be some left and right as you do this. You might sense the crank or feel the crank going left and right. On some bikes that is acceptable. This is one of them bikes that it is acceptable. It happens. It's how they are. This one feels good. Some bikes are locked in, some bikes are not. The left and right's not so much of a concern. You don't have to worry about that. You're more worried about one side of the crank going up and down or the other side. And on some Hondas, they have them roller bearings, and even them from brand new, they can have a little bit of up and down on the roller bearings, but shouldn't be much. This one feels good, so we're gonna be good. Holy cow, that tree above my shop is just like dropping stuff. Okay, let's take a look at this piston. Let's wipe it up, clean it up. Let's just see how she fared out. Well, she looks really good, especially for the amount of hours. It's a female-owned bike, and female owners are much like vet riders as far as they're not known to like over-rev their bikes or bounce off their rev limiters and stuff. So typically I do find their pistons come out a little bit better than some of your young guys that just really wring the crap out of them. I mean, I can see a little bit of wear here, right here, and right here at the end. But I can tell very little transmission trash. Maybe a little mild scratch right there. Very little bit of transmission trash is made up to this piston. If any scratches you see below the compression ring is usually from transmission trash. The transmission's always kind of shedding metal from time to time. It happens. That's why it's good to have a magnetic drain plug in your bike. If you don't have one, they're good to have to kind of catch that stuff ahead of time, because it does share the same motor oil with the transmission it does with the crank. Above the compression ring here, if you see scratches there, that indicates you've been getting dirt through your air filter, and I don't see any. So she's done a good job with her oil filter, and the transmission is not shedding much at all. This piston looks great. Let's take a look at the cylinder. Alright, the cylinder shows very good. Let me get something to point at. Here we go. Shows very good cross hatching. That's good. Some mild scuffing right here. It's nothing that can be felt, so that's going to be okay. That's actually pretty normal. Very good cross hatching. It's nice to see the cross hatching still there, because when the cross hatching gets worn away, that indicates that you've actually worn the cylinder away in that area. But this one's looking good. I see cross hatching making it all the way up to the top. So even where the rings come up right here, and it's under a lot of pressure under the combustion, it's still looking really good. I don't feel any ridge or lip coming across here. The piston ring, compression ring turns around right there and goes back down. They can sometimes leave a ridge or a lip. There's none. So this one's going to be real good. What I'll do is I'll take some Brillo pad here. You don't have to do this, but it'll make it look better. You can wipe away that carbon buildup. Make sure it's a very mild steel wool. Your finest grade that you can find. That's what I get, at least. There we go. Clean that right up. So yeah, this cylinder is looking in great shape, just like the piston looked in great shape. So we're good there. Okay, let's go ahead and check the valve clearances. I'll go ahead and set the camshafts back in place. Wipe it up here. Remember, the exhaust camshaft always has that that auto decompression right here, and there's the exhaust port, so we know that's the exhaust side. Man, that that tree is just dropping stuff. It's weird. It's crazy. Okay, set the cam cap back on. And drop in some of the bolts here. Gonna snug them down. Let's see what's that has that. Alright, go ahead and put the cam cap back on. Let me situate these where I'll be able to. Okay. And go ahead and set the bolts back in place. I believe the one with the extra little piece goes in this one. Yes, it does. Make sure you get them in the right holes. You can tell when you have all of them in the right place because each one will stick out the same distance, all equal. Give you an idea how much that is so you know. They should all stick out about 12 millimeters or so equally, and then you know you have them in their right home. Now I'm using this cordless Black & Decker here. It has a drag on it, so I don't have them real tight. They're just snugged up, but that's all you really have to do. Make sure they move freely. Yes, they do. Okay, let me look at the manual here. See? We're going to start with the intake. It says the clearance. I'm going to go by inches here. It says it should be 1 or 4/1000ths of an inch. Plus or minus 1,000. So basically 3, 4, or 5 thousandths is what we want to see. course, they have the metric there too. If you like to use metric, there's the specs for that. But we're gonna go by standard here in inches for this video. Oh boy, my wife just texted me this picture of a bunch of little baby chickens. She's over at the farmer's market or whatever. Oh boy. Okay, 3, 4, or 5. Alright, so we'll start with the intake side here. Gonna slide it right between the finger follower and the camshaft load. That's the 3. It was able to go in. Let me check the other intake. 3 was able to go in. It looks like that's good. Let's go and try the 5. Remember, it's got to be 3, 4, 5. Can't get the 5 in. That's good. Can't get the 5 in. That's good. And just for out of curiosity, let's try the 4 thousandths. Let's just see. Can't get the 4 in. Can't get the 3 in. But I was able, can't get the 4 in on either side. But I was able to get the 3 in. So that's going to be good. Try again. That's a 3. And that's a 3. Okay. The intake is good. That's good. Let's go ahead and shoot over to the exhaust now. Let's see what the specs are for that. For the exhaust, it says 7 thousandths plus or minus 1. Of course, there's metric right there if you're using metric. So, yeah, so it's going to be a 6, 7, or 8, basically. So let's check it out. So since we know it needs to be a 6, 7, or 8, let's start with the 6. I can get the 6 in. I can get the 6 in. I'll just go to 7. I get the 7 in, but there is some friction. 8. Can barely get the 8 in. And let's see, 9. Can't get the 9 in. Can't get the 9 in. We're good on the exhaust as well. Now, if you did have to make corrections, I'll just run that. We don't have to make any corrections here, but if you did, I'll show you how you have to do that. Let me get this cam cap off. Alright, got these all loose. I'll also take this opportunity to kind of show you some of the pry points, because this thing is really tough to get off. See this little tab right here? If you stick it right into here, you can get a little something there. There you go. Then right over here, there's a smaller tab, but you can, right here, there you go. And up here, same thing. So you just kind of work around all 3 of them until you get it to pop up. Because this is a tight one. There we go. Alright, you had to make corrections. Either intake or exhaust. You pull the camshafts out. You have these finger followers here. You flip them up, and right underneath each one of these finger followers, here I'll just work on this side so I'm stay out of the way. You have valve shims. You pop your valve shim out with a magnet. You can take a mic and measure what that valve shim was, what size it was, and you want a valve shim kit. Hot Cam sells them. They have all your different thicknesses valve shims. So let's say this valve was too tight and we needed to loosen it up a little bit. I would measure it, and that's a 1.88 millimeters. I would try maybe a 1.75, put that in, and recheck it. And I would keep doing that until I get the valve clearance that I need. Yeah, I have to put the cams back in, obviously, to recheck it. And I would keep doing that until I get the valve clearance I need. But since this one is good, come on, girl, we don't have to make any corrections, which is good. Okay, now, so I can clean up the head, the bottom mating surface, and everything like that without the valve shims falling out of their seat, because I don't want to get them mixed up, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just put this on. I don't have to bolt it on. As you can see, this thing hangs on there on its own. So I'll be able to just leave it like that. So let me flip it over. And we're going to clean up this surface. You want to use a brand new box cutter blade. Brand new. Don't use an old one that's all charred up. It'll scratch the surface. Use a brand new one, make sure it's clean. Now when they cut these things out, the blade always seems to be cut, the sharp end seems to be cut with a little angle, either that way or that way. So you want to figure out which way it angles. Like, looks like it's angling that way, so I'm going to put it like this, because you want the angle to kind of curve up. That way it's less likely to snag. And all you do is hold it at an angle like this, see, just like that, and you just slide it across and just work that black stuff right up off there. You're not looking to make it look perfect. You don't want to hit this with any sandpaper or anything like that. All we're looking to do is get the old gasket material off. Like, see that stuff, that black mark right here? Watch this. That's all we're looking to do, is just get that stuff off there. You're still going to see some lines where the head gasket pressed hard against the head. That's okay. That's not going to hurt anything. All we need to do is just get the old gasket off so it doesn't interfere with the sealing of the new head gasket. That's all I'm looking to do here. Like I said, you're still going to see lines like that, like right around here. That's perfectly normal. I have seen people try to sand all that stuff off to make it look perfectly new, like a new head. You don't want to do that. And you don't want to remove any material off these. You don't want to mill them or anything, because that's going to change your cam timing. If you take this to a shop and say resurface this head, they'll shave some material off it, right? But what that does is that lowers the head on the motor, which will actually retard your cam timing just a little bit. And you don't want to do that. So the best thing to do is just clean it with a nice box cutter. And don't remove any material. It's got a little nick there. That's weird. Let me see. Probably okay. Alright, that looks cleaned up. Let me flip that around. I'll go take this outside and clean it up in a second, but we have to do that to the cylinder as well. Same thing, you got all this old gasket material, same box cutter blade, again, brand new one. And if yours, as you're doing this, it doesn't hurt to swap out to a new blade from time to time if it starts either getting dull on you, or if you nick it and it starts catching stuff. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and swap this one out right now. We'll look at the blade, figure out which way it angles. Looks like it angles that way. You'll be able to tell if you got it wrong on the angle. It'll seem to bite things better. Like when you go over these little holes, you'll feel it start to snag it. You just flip the blade over, and that'll clean it right up. Alright, let me get this one cleaned up and I'll be right back. Okay, got that all cleaned up. Now I'm going to check the bottom side. Usually the bottom side, you really don't have to do much except just wipe it up. For some reason that bottom gasket doesn't leave much material behind. But if I see that it did, I will remove it. I don't know if that's material there around the coolant port or if it's just a marking, so I'm just going to hit it lightly with this. Yeah, it's just marking. Okay, we're good. Okay, brand new piston time. Got the Wiseco piston. These are really nice pistons. I like them. Alright. There she is. She's a work of art. Okay, it doesn't hurt to compare it to the stock one. Make sure they didn't accidentally slip us a wrong piston here. Now, quick observation. On the Honda, they put a dot on the intake side. We can tell this is the intake because the valve reliefs are bigger for the intakes, the larger intake valves, and these are the exhaust valves. They put the dot there. For the Wiseco piston, they don't have a dot. They just have the part number, but what they have is an arrow right here pointing to the exhaust. And again, valve reliefs are bigger. But anyway, let me compare them again, and they seem like they are pretty much the same compression ratio. They sent us the right piston. And I guess it doesn't hurt to slide in here upside down real quick just to get a test fit, see how it fits. Fits good, nice and snug. Alright, okay, so I'll start with the oil ring expander. I'll pick either the left or the right side of the piston to put the open end of the oil expander on that side. So I prefer to put on the side. I'm putting my finger right there to keep the two end gaps from overlapping each other. Now I'll take one of the oil rings, and I'm going to start on the bottom of the oil expander. One goes on the bottom, one goes on the top. I'll just start on the bottom. Doesn't really matter which one you pick. There we go. And you notice I put that end gap on the front side of the piston. You can put front or rear, doesn't matter. The important thing is that they're staggered. So this end gap is going to go completely on the other side. And this one's going to go on the top side of the ring expander. Okay, there it is. Not sure you're going to get a light. Oh yeah. What I like to do afterward is just go around, press my finger all the way around, make sure the oil rings can fall all the way into the seat of the piston. It's not sticking out in any one spot. That lets me know it's in with the expander properly. Okay, the compression ring. There is a top and a bottom to these rings. You can figure out which one it is by the marking. They either put an N or R or something like that. This one has a see that R right there? That means that's the top side. Since the top oil ring gap is right here on this side of the piston, on the back side, the exhaust side, I'm going to put the compression ring gap on the intake side, because again, you want to stagger all the ring gaps from the compression ring to the oil rings. You stagger them. There we go. And of course I'll check that after I have it on the bike. I'll double check they didn't get moved before I slide the cylinder on. Cut all this stuff out. I like to put one wrist pin. I like to put one circlip in while it's still on the bench. That way when it's on the bike I only have to worry about one. Okay, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and everyone has their own way that they like to put these circlips in. Let me see, I'm going to put the first one in on the left side because it'll allow me to put the other one in while it's on the bike on the right side, so the timing chain is not in my way. So what I did is I put the wrist pin in here. I'm going to hold it with my finger at the bottom from sliding all the way through. That's going to help me put the first circlip in. There's a little cutout right here that helps you get the wrist pins out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the open end, this piece right here, the open end, and that little cutout. There we go. And then I'll use my thumb here to hold that in. Then I'm going to start right here and just walk it in all the way around. There we go. I got that in there. Let's slide the wrist pin out now. Now what I'm going to do is take that open end of the circlip and just slide it over if I can. There you go. I slide it over so that the open end is right here where that open end of the piston is at. That way the whole circlip is in a groove all the way around. That's how I do it. Been doing it like that for years. No issues. Okay. This upper wrist pin or upper rod bearing right here, it still has oil all over it. You technically don't have to put any assembly lube on it. Plus it's going to get oil to make you fire up. But I'll drop a little bit in that hole right there and it's just going to dribble through. I don't like to use too much assembly lube, unlike some mechanics. That stuff just contaminates your oil and you don't really need much of it. Okay, piston with the arrow face towards the exhaust, and I can see the intake valve recess right here. So yeah, we're putting this in the right way. Oh, almost forgot. Let's wrap a rag around this first. There we go. In case we drop a wrist pin, a circlip while we're putting it on. Okay, back at it. There we go. Angle it. Plus the rag also does a good job protecting the piston as it hits the side of the case here, so we don't scratch it up as we try to get this circlip in. Now when I go to put this circlip in, you're probably not going to be able to see what I'm doing here because my hands will be in the way, but you saw how I did it on the bench, and that's how I'm doing it the same exact way. just a little more difficult down here. Not as much room. Almost. There we go. Let me center it out in that little groove like I did on the bench. Okay, I'm going to make a good visual. Make sure it's in its groove all the way around. I like to rock the wrist pin back. I got my finger on the other side. I like to rock the wrist pin back and forth and feel it hit the circlip. And then I like to look at the circlip all the way around the groove. Make sure it's definitely in its seat really good. And then for peace of mind, I'll go to the other side and double check this one as well. Even though I did it on the bench and I knew it was good on the bench, it's just peace of mind. Once this thing's together, I won't have to second question my work. Now, I will not be putting any oil on that piston. I'm not going to lube the cylinder, not going to lube the piston. If it was a brand new cylinder I was using, I would put a light coating on the cylinder and then wipe it off so that it's technically oily, but there's no oil on it. A used cylinder like this one, I just put the piston in dry and start it up that way. The reason being, if you get too much oil in this piston and it gets up in these oil rings, the oil rings won't seat very quickly, and the bike's going to puff smoke. It's just going to do that, and it might take a while before these rings finally clean up and seat and the smoking stops. It could take a while. And if you're doing this for someone else, a customer or whatever, they come to pick up their bike and it's puffing smoke, they're not going to be happy. Also, it doesn't hurt anything at all. There's no damage on the piston when you do it that way. It's just sliding up and down the cylinder. That's all it's doing. And there's an oil squirter down there. As soon as you fire it up, it's going to be shooting oil at that piston. It's not going to hurt a thing. All right. Go ahead and remove this rag. Rest that very gently like that. Okay, I'm checking this surface right here. Make sure it's good and clean and ready to install the cylinder base gasket. It's looking good. Okay, pop the two dowel pins back into place. Alright, brand new Honda cylinder base gasket. Oh, wrong way, almost. There we go. Okay, time to slide the cylinder on. Let me just verify that the ring end gaps are in their proper place, staggered properly. Well, they became way off, didn't they? Let's see. That tree is dropping so much stuff. Okay, we have them staggered properly. Let me go get the cylinder. Start by putting the intake side in first. Kind of hold that compressor ring in for me. I'm gonna have my fingers on each side and pressing the piston rings in as I rock the cylinder slowly down on it. Obviously feeling for any bind. If it starts binding, pull it back up. You might have snagged the oil ring. But this one came out good, so we're good here. Brand new piston is in. I'll go ahead and put this 8mm down in here, but I'm only going to put it finger tight right now. I'm not going to torque it down because it's only one bolt on one side and I don't want to, cockeye the whole cylinder. It's just to hold it in place for me right now as I slide the cylinder head on. It's on there finger tight for now. Oh man, I have these chickens in here again. Come on guys, I'm trying to work. Trying to work. Alright. Go ahead, drop the dowel pins on the cylinder. Gotta watch out with Beavis. He likes to sneak up behind you and get you real good in the ankles, and he hurts. Alright, and the cylinder head gasket. There we go. About time to drop that cylinder head on. This is gonna be fun. Okay, it's gonna be tight. Putting it back on just like it was taking it off. I typically try to remember how I had to wiggle it and twist it and stuff to get it off, and try to reverse that order when it's time to put it on. But let's give it a shot. Here we go. Wish me luck, guys. Actually, that wasn't that bad. But I feel like because I touched the bottom side of the cylinder head with my gloves on, I'm just going to slide my bare fingers on there, make sure I didn't get any grains of sand or anything, and look at the gasket. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, I feel good about that. Let's drop it on. Alright, get that lined up. Sweet. Okay, the manual here claims the cylinder head bolts there, number 12, is going to be 35 foot-pounds, or if you like to use newtons or whatever, there it is right there, 48 or 4.9, but I'm going to use foot-pounds. Going to set it to 35 foot-pounds. Let's do that. Okay, I've taken each one of these cylinder head bolts and dipped the threads in oil. Also put a little bit of oil on the washers here. So let's go drop them in their holes. They're all the same length, so that's good. Okay. Now I'm just going to seat them down lightly before I break out the torque wrench. I'm going to start with the cross pattern, starting with the left rear, then the right front, then the left front, and the right rear. Okay, now let's get the torque wrench. Alright, I'm going to start by setting the torque wrench. Let's see, I'm going to start at 20 foot-pounds. I'm going to stagger it. I mean, I'm going to do it in stages. The manual didn't mention about doing it in stages. Most manuals do. It's just good practice. You don't want to crank the first one all the way down to 35 pounds. Again, going to stagger it. There we go. Left rear, then right front. Then left front. Then right rear. Alright. Now it said the torque specs are 35, but I'm gonna do one more round at 30 first. There we go. Okay, here we go, 35. Yep. Okay, I'm going to do one more round at 35 again, just to double check. Of course, when I was putting the cylinder head on, I forgot to mention, you want to be careful about flipping the cylinder head over or on its side too much. You don't want one of these valve shims jumping out, and then you got to find which one it went in. We're looking good. Sweet. Okay, I can go ahead and put these in and tighten all three of these up now. Don't want to go too tight with these. You can stroke them out. They're just little 8mm. Just want to snug them up pretty good and bottom them out pretty good and just snug them up against that. And let me get this last one here. And I'll go ahead and bolt the radiator back down. Let me take care of that. Plug in this engine coolant temperature sensor while I'm down here. There we go. Might as well go ahead and put this back on while I'm over here on the left side. Okay, I got that all back in place. Go ahead and take care of this too. Okay, time to drop the cams in and set the cam timing. Got your magnet right. You're going to need that to reach in there and grab that timing chain. Pull it up and on out. I'm just going to use this to set it like that for now so I can reach it with my hand. Okay, let me find top dead center again. Even though I had it set at top dead center earlier, as you know, I've had piston off and crank around, all that good stuff. So let me grab the timing chain. You want to hold the timing chain up when you're spinning the motor by hand so it doesn't get kinked down there on the crankshaft area. There we go. Let me show you. Remember earlier in the video I showed you there are two lines. The one right here that's faint and only goes right here. It doesn't go all the way across. Again, sometimes I mess up in the factory, but it's the second line, the one that's higher. That's the line that you want to line up to that little cutout groove that's right here. And that's top dead center. So let's go to the other side and slide the cams on in. Okay, before I start sliding this camshaft in, I need to show you something real quick. Oh, let me shut my light here. In the manual, remember I showed you earlier in the video the little lines that you line up to the mating surface right here? Well, you also have to make sure the cam lobes are faced the correct way. So we can see this cam lobe right back here is faced angled up that way with the auto decompression, that little tab angled that way. And over here they actually show a dotted line showing you that it's faced that way. So that's how we have to get this lined up. For the intake, the cam lobe face that way. For the exhaust, the cam lobe faces that way, with the lines lined up with the mating surface. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to start with the exhaust cam here and pull my timing chain up and out. Try not to yank on the chain too much because you can knock the motor off top dead center, but when it's all said and done, we're going to go over there and check it, make sure it is, and we're going to double check, triple check, quadruple check all of this. Okay, let me look down here, see where we're at. Okay, that's looking good. Again, I have that pointy piece right there face that way, and you probably can't see on the camera, but I'll show you in a little bit. The cam lobe is faced up that way with the weight down here, so that's good. the lines right here and the lines right there. We're good there. Let me go and grab the intake cam. Of course, I do that by rotating the cam until the chain is tight on this side, because that's what we're adjusting it to, the tight side. This is where the cam chain tensioner is at on this side, so we're not worried about that side. Okay, got this exhaust lined up good. Pointed that way, this part, and the cam lobes are pointed up at an angle that way. So let's go and start working on the intake cam. This is a tight fit. Cam lobe should be facing that way with the 2 marks lined up to the mating surface. So let's do the best we can with that. You see how I had to put the gears in between each other right here to kind of, this is a tough fit, guys. I'm not going to kid you. I can tell that's going to be a little off. Let's start with that. Let's see. Okay. There we go. Okay, we're a little off on this one right here. I'm gonna have to make some minor adjustments here. Again, it's a super duper tight fit. Here you go. It's actually almost easier to loosen up the camshaft, but I gotta remember where it was at. So let me, alright. Oops. Slide the exhaust camshaft out, and then I'm gonna move this one spot this way. Oop, that one jumped too. There we go. Alright, let's try this again. Like I said, it's a super tight fit, I'll tell you that. Okay. Let me go to the other side of the motor and make sure it's still at top dead center. I'll be back. Okay, I got it at top dead center. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put one hand over the camshafts, push the back end of the camshafts down while I stick my other finger up where the timing chain tensioner goes. I'm going to press it tightly, acting like the timing chain tensioner is in there. Now let me move this hand so we can check it out. So we have one line here, one line there. That exhaust lobe is faced that way. One line here, one line there. That exhaust lobe is facing that way. Let me show you up here. You see how this exhaust lobe is faced up and that way, and that one's up and that way. So we should be good to go ahead and put the cam cap back on, and then the timing chain tensioner in, and then we're going to double check our work. Okay, let's get the cam cap back on. I'm just going to put a dab of assembly lube on the cam journal here. Nothing crazy. You don't have, honestly, this stuff's still oily. You really don't have to do this. And it's going to get oil right away. And I'm not going to go crazy with it. I've seen people literally like slather these things full as if the motor's going to have to rely on assembly lube for 20 minutes or something. And it's not true. All this stuff will get oil within about 1 to 2 seconds after it fires up. Maybe 3 tops. So you just need just enough. And it's not hot yet. The parts aren't hot yet. So it's, you know, you don't want to contaminate your motor oil with a bunch of assembly lube. That's what I'm trying to say. Even if you change your oil, you don't always get all the oil out of there. You know, it's pretty much impossible to get all the oil out of there. So just try to avoid the contamination. Try to not go too crazy on the assembly lube. There we go. We got the cam cap in place. Alright. Okay, time to start dropping the bolts in for the cam cap. I have a dotted Loctite on each one of these. Now I'm going to start with the one that has a long tab at the end of it that has no threads. That one goes in the front left one. If yours does not go in far enough to catch threads, that just means the little pin that's going through there's a half moon cut out on it and it got twisted. If that happens and it won't go in, one of the things you can do is stick something pointy in there and try to get it, try to twist that pin to where you can slide this in. Worst case scenario, you might have to take off this little cap over here on this side. I'll show you that in a minute. and then twist it by hand until you can get that in. Because sometimes it's just while we were adjusting the valve, sometimes it can get knocked off. But this one's going in, so that's good, going in by hand. So if you can't get that long bolt on the front left of the cam cap end, the one with the extended part on the very end, take this cover off right here, and you should be able to twist that little pin in there until you can get that bolt in on the front left. That's good. All right, let me get the rest. Next, I'm going to do the two that have the little copper washer. They go in the center right here. Okay, now I'm just going to put the rest. Some are shorter, some are longer. But like I showed you earlier, they should all stick out about 12 millimeters before you start tightening them up. So what I do is I just stick them all in the holes like this and make sure they all stick out equally. If they're all sticking out equally at 12 millimeters, I know each one's in their right hole. And I have, like I said, I have a dab of Loctite on each one just for safety. They don't use Loctite on stock. I guess they feel like they don't need to. And for the most part, you don't need to. But I like to. Because I have seen the damage that's done when they come loose. I can honestly say I've never seen one come loose on a bike that hasn't been torn apart before. It's always been when someone else has already worked on it. And they just didn't put them tight enough. But still, I put a dab of Loctite on. Now I'm just going to tighten them up by hand. Again, like all the bolts I've been mentioning, these are easy to strip out. So just bottom them out and snug them up pretty good. You want to snug them up pretty good without stripping them out. I use a quarter drive like this because it's a little bit harder for me to over tighten them. I'm going to go ahead and do a second round just to make sure I got them all good and snug. Alright, we can go ahead and put the timing chain tensioner in now. Okay, the timing chain tensioner, this little booger, we have to compress it, reset it. So I took that little 8mm out of the end there. It takes a small skinny flat head, and you'll see as we turn it, it compresses. Now as you compress it, obviously as soon as you pull this out, it pops back out. So it's hard to get it on the bike if it keeps popping out, right? There's two ways to do this. You can either tighten up real good at the bottom, and they have a self-locking mechanism to them. It's really tough to get it there. Here, let me see. Here you go. I put a set of vice grips on the screwdriver to give me more leverage. There we go. It'll lock on its own like that when you screw it down really tight. And once you get it on the bike, you can just loosen it up and boom. And then there's another way. Let me show you. If you have the little special tool, or you can make one even. It's this little thing right here. See it? You can put it, you see them little lines? You can just put it in there. Boom. That will hold it down for us. I'm going to use this method, but if you don't have that, you can just do the tighten up real tight like I showed you right there. And then once you get on the bike, you just loosen it up. Okay. We have a brand new gasket for that too. Okay, time to pop the new tension, or the tensioner in. Got the new gasket on it. Oh great, the gasket keeps spinning on me. There we go. Just gonna get these in by finger first before I hit them with the air ratchet. There we go. All right. Okay, I'm gonna finish tightening that up by hand because I don't want to strip them out. There we go. There we go. Okay, Now this, you see how I press the chain down here so it's loose, because I want to see it tighten up. This is where you're either going to, if you use the flathead method to lock it in, you would stick your flathead in here and loosen it and then pull it out, and it'll tighten the chain up. Or if you did it like I just did with the little tool, you just pull it out and wash the chain right up here when I pull this out. See how it tightened up? That's how you know it was done right and it's good. Okay, let me go to the other side of the motor. I'm going to spin it to line up the cam marks again, or the top dead center mark over there, and then let's verify that the cam timing is correct. Also, let me put this back in right here and tighten that up. Okay, you can see we have one line right here, one line right there, one line right here. That's looking good. Now let me look at the cam lobes. That one should be faced that way. Yes, it is. This one should be faced this way. Yes, it is. Okay. What I'm going to do now is go to the other side of the motor and turn the crankshaft at the stator. I'm going to do 2 complete turns on the crankshaft, and that will spin the cams 1 complete turn. And I'm going to do that because I want to make sure nothing's going to bind. I want to make sure the valves aren't going to hit the piston or anything like that before we hit that start button. I can catch any mistake I made early just by spinning it gently by hand. So let's go do that. Okay, I stopped at top dead center there. Okay, did 2 rotations of crank there, 1 line here, 1 line there, 1 line there, 1 line there. Cam's face that way, this lobe's face that way, that lobe's face that way. We are good. All right, let's go ahead and put the valve cover back on. Oops, I almost forgot. I need to put this on first. Duh. And I put Loctite on these bolts as well. You don't need any of that stuff coming loose while you're out riding. I mean, these might be okay if they come loose because it looks like they'll probably just hit the valve cover as they're coming loose and stop there, but I don't want to take any chances. We are so close to starting her up, which is good because it's Friday and I'm ready to be done for the week. Okay, let's get the valve cover in there. Got the valve cover gasket on the valve cover. This was a little bit of a tight fit getting it out, so I expect it to be a little bit of a tight fit getting it in. Let's see here. Let's see if I can slip it this way. Doesn't look like I can. Let's try again this way. Huh, there we go. Alright, before I set that down, let me make sure the valve gasket is in its seat. Looking good. Alright, let me get the valve cover bolts and we'll tighten her on down. Okay, now we have to get the subframe back up on the bike with the throttle body back on the carb, on the head. The reason I waited till almost the end to do that is because we needed that room to get the valve cover in there. Should be pretty straightforward. There we go. Put some the top subframe bolts in by finger here just to hold it in place. Okay, let me put the rest of the subframe bolts in and then we'll tighten up the boot for the throttle body. Okie dokie, verified that the throttle body is definitely all the way on that boot. So let me go ahead and tighten that up. Okay, off camera, to save a little bit of time, I went ahead and put these covers on, connected the battery, put the battery cover back on, both the motor mounts back on, this hose right here, and I have the ignition coil back in. So, what's next? Let me see. I guess the next thing to do is get the exhaust back on. Let's do that. Okay, really close to starting up for the first time. Let me go pull out this little rubber piece. Yep, I think they're good. I'm going to start by connecting the fuel line. And then push that, once you slide it all the way on the nipple, you got to push that green tab back down. I like to flip the tank over to the other side. Basically, I just reverse the steps that it took to take it off. That straightens out here. Let me get that straightened out real quick. There we go. Then you have to put this little plastic piece back on there. Which way did that go, by the way? It went this way. I got my head blocking from you seeing what I'm doing. That's not good. And then hook the little rubber pieces onto that plastic piece. Okay, we have to hook up the electrical line. I believe it went under, let's see. Yeah. Put that in there. Plug that in there. Lastly, we have the safety strap we have to reconnect on. That thing's a pain in the butt. Save you time, let me do that off camera because that can take a couple minutes to get it on there right. Okay, I still need to add coolant in before I can run her, but I'm going to do a quick test fire and just shut her right off, just to make sure I got everything right and we don't have to dig in before I start putting all this plastic back on and stuff. Let's do it. Turn the choke on. Looking good. All right. It can take a little bit on the first startup, like you saw there, because it has to prime the fuel line. You know, when we disconnected the fuel line, a lot of the fuel was lost from the line, and when you first start hitting the start button, there's a lot of air in that line. It did start up really quickly once I turned the choke on, which is fine. That does help. I probably should have did that right from get-go, but no big deal. Let me go ahead and put all the rest of this plastic on, bolt the tank on, everything like that, and we're going to do some heat cycles. I'll be right back. Okay, got all the plastic back on her, have it filled up with coolant. Everything's looking good. Let's go ahead and fire up, run it through a heat cycle. I'm just going to sit here and let her get warmed up, and then we're going to check her for some oil or water leaks. Okay, she's fully warmed up now. Looking good. Okay, I'm going to let her cool down for about 15 minutes and run another heat cycle. What I suggest is 3 heat cycles on the stand, like I did right here. You just let it run until it gets fully warm, checking the top of the radiator until it's pretty much hot. Like, you can't really keep your fingers on it, nice and warm and hot, and shut it off. You don't want to run it so long that it starts puking water out of the radiator overflow, obviously. And you can do a little blip of the throttle here or there like I did, that's fine. So you want to run about 3 heat cycles on the stand, then you take it to the track or wherever you like to ride. On the first ride, make it a shorter ride, about 8 to 10 minutes long. Try to avoid sustained full throttles. You can do quick bursts like to get over a jump or whatever, but just try to avoid sustained full throttle on the first ride. And make it a shorter ride, 8 to 10 minutes. Come back in, let it cool off for about 15 minutes. Check your coolant and your motor oil one more time, and if everything's good, at that point you can give her all the beans. But anyway, let me let this one cool off for a minute. We're going to start her back up and do one more quick heat cycle. Alright, let's do another heat cycle. I'm going to sit here and let it get warmed up a little bit, and I'll be right back. Okay, she's nice and warm and still looking good. Well, there you go, guys. She's done and ready for the track again. This weekend I'll be riding Dade City Motocross. That's my YZ125 right there. But I'm going to take out the YZ250 this weekend. That's over there in the other shop. And on Sunday, the extended track. Hope to see you guys out there. If you don't ride out there this weekend, I hope you ride somewhere, wherever you're at. Hope you guys have a great weekend. And yeah, catch you next time.